All right, we are live. Andrew Sugerman, welcome to the Future of Fitness.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun. I've already enjoyed our conversation 10 minutes prior, laughed a lot, and I can tell you just have a great demeanor about you. So always really enjoy a good vibe on a Friday morning. Andrew, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, you have an extensive background, from Hollywood and digital content, like, very, very deep knowledge and experience in that area. And now, leading the way for Centr, which is, most people know Chris Hemsworth as the kind of brand idol for that one. And I mean, I'll say that guy knows how to get fit, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I really like the perspective that you guys are putting out there, and with the product and the messaging about overall wellness. And a lot of that is focused on mental wellness, which, is a huge component of what makes people happy, right? We can be, have a great physical, we can have a great physique, we can eat well, we can all these things. But I know a lot of people who have all those boxes checked and they're actually quite miserable and depressed. And that's not a good thing. So anyway, I think a great place to start with someone like you is maybe just give us your origin story, Andrew. I know there's a lot to unpack there, but how'd you get to be the CEO of Centr?
Sure. You threw in Hollywood. So
Mm-hmm.
I spent 12 years with the Walt Disney Company, and while there oversaw all of the global publishing units as well as the digital media. That spanned books, magazines, comics. The world of Star Wars, the world of Marvel Comics, to everything that was a mobile app, to an interactive experience, to web, mobile, social. So I had the opportunity to manage 1.2 billion Facebook followers for the Walt Disney Company. So that was a pretty big audience that we had to speak to every single day, with content across about 300 different social handles. Keeping the Toy Story audience engaged was not a small undertaking. And in that regard, I also managed the sort of new media side, so AR and VR as it was expanding, and how a company could play and bring brands to life in those areas. And so I'd say through all that, it was really about building brands, and brands that were some of the most recognized brands in the world. And I left Disney at the end of 18. I worked with Mav Carter and LeBron James's Spring Hill Entertainment, and worked with them in how they brought together Spring Hill and Uninterrupted, and giving voice to athletes. And so I've always had this element of athlete sports in my life, going all the way back to high school, where I played soccer, into college. I got into endurance competitions like uh, uh, half marathons. I've run, more than 2 dozen. I then got into triathlons. Then I did 2 half Ironmans, and it's like the 5K is the gateway drug to what ends up being all these other races and things. And it was amazing. During the pandemic, I got hit by a car, and ended up in the ICU, and shattered all the ribs on one side, and got as close to leaving the planet as I would want to get to.
Wow.
And so I've spent the last 2 years recovering from that, and getting back to some state of where I was prior to that. And it's sort of, for me, elevated the importance of wellness, and both mental wellness, physical wellness, nutrition, and how to come back from something like that, right? And right, it's one thing to be on the I'm getting better and better and better. This is now, oh no, I'm rebuilding, and starting from almost zero to rebuild back up. And so this opportunity with Centr presented itself, and it was almost like, I don't know, serendipitous, where I was like mentally and physically going down this road, and along comes this opportunity that captured so much of what it was I was looking for. It had nutrition, it had mental health and mental fitness and physical. And Chris, encapsulates so much of that in who he is, in his approach to life. And it just felt like this perfect convergence of digital media, physical goods, global audience, and in success, really makes such a profound impact on the lives of millions of people. So that's sort of like the background.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm sorry to hear about the accident. Were you running? Were you biking? Were you just
I
walking
was
around?
walking. I was walking. I got hit by an SUV, and yeah, blacked out. Came to. You know, my appreciation to first responders and EMTs. They were there within, I don't even know, I think 5 minutes, and had me in an ambulance and took me to the trauma, was it USC, LAC USC hospital. So it was, the quality of first responders, at least in LA, was unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah. Kudos. They are. They don't get nearly enough credit. They deal with
No, no,
a lot of
no.
BS, and yeah, and they're there when you need them. Um, one of the questions I always like to ask people like you, because I feel like it's a lot of people throw the term brand around, right? Like,
Yep.
it can be a lot of things. There's no real solid definition for it. And everybody,
Mhm.
there's a lot of quote unquote brand experts, right? They like tell you, well, I love your brand and you're so on brand and, all
Right.
these things, right? So it can be used professionally in the right way. It can also be used as just kind of a catch-all term. When you
Yep.
think of brand, like what is that? What comes to mind for you? How do you put some guidelines around what a brand is?
Yeah. So for me, a brand is something that an, something that you have a deep emotional connection with,
Hmm.
and that the narrative of that thing is very clear in your head, and so you can relate to it, you understand it, you have a feeling for it, and it's not, and it can't just be created, right? You have, like, it's like a relationship. You have to build trust. You have to create that emotional feeling and that emotional connection. And if you betray that trust, it it takes a lot to rebuild it. Right? And I look at things like, if you look at a brand like Star Wars, uh, Star Wars is so driven off of the fanboys of Star Wars. And they know everything. They know everything about the universe. They know everything about, like, how all the pieces fit together between the video games and the movies and the TV shows and the animated series. And if anything goes astray, they're like, wait, whoa, whoa, whoa. That, like, you're violating the trust. And so it's really about staying true to what you're creating and honoring that relationship.
That's a really good answer. And I think, when I think of great brands, I think of Disney, I think of Star Wars, I think of Coca-Cola, right?
Yeah.
When I think of Coca-Cola, I think of the polar bears, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what I
Yeah.
think of, just like a really happy family environment. Just gonna
Yeah.
enjoy a Coca-Cola. Um, and then I think about people as brands too. And one of the strongest ones that I use and have heard as a great example is like Ryan Reynolds, right? He's created such an amazing brand around himself. So
Yeah.
when you look at, there's companies, but what about the individuals? Is it
Yeah.
similar? Is it different?
I think it's really similar. I think Ryan's a great example. I think Chris is a great
Yes.
example as well. Like,
Yeah.
Chris is um, so much more than like a spokesperson for what we do and who we are. He is really, truly a business partner, and uh, is in many ways emblematic of what we're bringing to this audience. So the whole idea of Centr as a digital platform started with him, and as he was going through life and training for all these different roles and things that he was doing in his career, he was connected with amazing experts across all these different facets of wellness that ranged from, nutritionists and personal trainers and coaches in mental health and mental fitness, and he realized that it wasn't the silos of these pieces, but the combination of these things together that really made him perform at the levels that he performed at. And he was asking himself, like, why is this restricted to, like, me in this situation? Like, why can't I bring this insight, these resources to everyone? And that's what led to Centr launching in 2019, was really how to democratize this to everyone. And And so Chris has put himself really in the middle of this. He's put himself in the middle of longevity research and insights. For those people that have seen Limitless, that's a perfect example of that, where like that's not coincidental. Like these are things that are very, very much front burner for Chris. And we look at that as elements that we want to bring into Centr. Like Centr should be as much about the content and the tools to motivate, as well as giving people insight on preventative, like fitness and wellness as preventative measures from a healthcare standpoint.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, the term holistic has been thrown around for so long, and I think you and I have been
Yeah,
on this
it's up
planet
there with
long enough.
brand. Like,
Yeah,
it's in one of those other words that's thrown around a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, exactly. And it's been thrown around for. I mean, when I first heard of holistic, I thought of like patchouli oil and that type of crowd, alternative
Yeah.
medicines and
Yeah.
things like
Woo
that.
woo.
Woo woo. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Was the term I was searching for. But now it's a little bit more, I guess, defined, right? It's a little bit more
Yeah.
modern. It's a little bit more scientific, right?
Yeah.
So when you guys throw around the term holistic, and maybe you can just wrap it into like what the consumer experience is for Centr. Like, yeah, let's start with that. Like, what is the consumer experience for Centr? What are you guys shooting for? What is it?
Yeah.
What's the ride?
So we're looking for, there's different on-ramps that bring people into Centr. It could be, a lot of times it's fitness, but it could be nutrition, or it could be mindfulness or mental health. And what we're looking to do is provide a roadmap where people can curate their own wellness journey. They combine these pieces together and bring them continually the resources to do it. And we're looking to not make it bolt-ons, right? Where it's like, here's this thing. Oh, and there's this trend happening over here. Let's bolt that onto the experience. But rather, how do we make them integrated so that if you're going to do a big workout tomorrow, what should you think about eating today? Or what should you think about eating, post-workout? Where does meditation fall into this? So how can we really help you think about when you wake up in the morning, you go through your day, and then you go to sleep? What are the things that we can help you with on that journey? And we can either prescribe them, or you can curate or personalize them as it relates to what you're looking to do. And that will only grow in the product evolution to come as we continue to lean into elements of AI and elements of personalization. In some ways,
Yeah.
I liken it to like, if you've ever gone to like a retreat or a spa, and you wake up in the morning and there's that little schedule on your table that's like, oh, activities, like we have wake up and rise and shine yoga out on the platform overlooking the mountains or whatever, and then you have this, and then you have this. Why is that restricted to when you're on a retreat at a spa? Like, how can we bring elements of that to you on helping you think about your journey throughout the day, every day?
Those are, you just brought up two of my favorite words on this podcast. Anybody who listens knows AI and personalization. Like those are, two things I think are really critical right now for the industry. And a lot of people kind of understand them. A lot of people just throw them around. But I think what you guys are doing, obviously you're well capitalized. You have the resources, you have the leadership to really produce something great. The personalization, right? I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but I understand like the personalized journey, like you mentioned, like you wake up in the morning, this is what you should be doing, right? This is what your week's going to look like. And it can change, it can adjust, right? Over time, given whatever inputs or shifts in your schedules, you name it. What do you see personalization looking like 3 years from now when it comes to the fitness and health wellness perspective?
3 years. I mean, that's like dog years, and like AI is like,
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, the computers will be working out for us, and we'll watch them.
Right.
No, I would say the sophistication on who you are, and potentially your biomarkers of you as an individual that are pulled off of like wearables coming from like Whoop and Aura and all the others that are going down this road, pulling data insights and then creating really tailored recommendations for you across the gamut of nutrition, fitness and movement, and mental health, meditation. And that mental health is a broad category, right? It can range from true mental health and meditation to mental fitness, and those are different. And I have a very, well, I don't want to sidetrack, but I have a very strong view on that component of what we're doing, and that I think there's a mental health crisis that is in this country, and I think more broadly, and we should be offering tools that help people on this journey as a component of what we're bringing to them. That if we make them stronger physically, but we don't help them be stronger mentally, it's sort of doesn't really solve the problem. It's a half solution that eventually will fade away in many ways. So, but I think that with AI and with personalization, it'll be able to more easily identify what's the real problem we're helping you solve. And I think that's really where we want to be at the forefront. That you're like, I want a wellness solution. Why? Why do you want a wellness solution? I want to lose 10 pounds. Why? Why do you want to lose 10 pounds? Like, is it really a physical thing, or is there something that's more mentally here that you have, there's a trauma or something that hits on anxiety or PTSD or whatnot, that if we help you lose 10 pounds, but we don't help you identify this side, then we're going to be seeing you again. And in a perfect world, we won't be seeing you again for the same thing because we've helped solve the real problem.
Yeah, I like that take a lot. And I think that's, people who have especially worked in the trenches in the fitness industry know that, like, you never stop at, what's your goal? Well, it's always lose 10 pounds, right? It's always, something like that. It's always lose. It's like, that's like 80% of the time. You're like, I just want to lose 10, 20 pounds. Right. And then you ask those questions, well, why? And then it comes down to, like, I remember one, sitting in my office doing an assessment, and came down eventually. He's like, well, my wife won't sleep with me anymore if I don't lose 30 pounds. We're like, okay. All right. Well, there's a lot to unpack there, right?
Wow. Okay.
That's specific. Yeah. And then, like, you get down to these really interesting things, and, people who've asked that question, a couple thousand times will probably have really funny anecdotes for it. One of the things I appreciate too, and it's something that democratization, another word that I've heard, thrown out there, is accessibility. Because, a lot of these things start, like, the Peter Attias out there, or for people who can spend $100,000 a year on their wellness and longevity, right? But that doesn't help the bigger problem, which is the mental health and obesity and, all these curable, preventable diseases that we have, metabolic diseases specifically. So, like, when you look at accessibility, democratization, whatever you want to call it, like, how are you guys striving to do that?
Yeah, so it's a huge part of who we are and what we're looking to do. That touches on a few different things. So,
sure.
To your point about, somebody willing to pay $100,000, or I view that connected fitness in many ways has fallen into that bucket, where you've needed to buy an expensive piece of equipment. And then once you bought that equipment, it's a paperweight unless you now spend ongoing monthly large amounts to actually enable that product to do what it's supposed to do. And during the pandemic, that was great because no one had any alternatives. The gyms were done. It was all of a sudden the disposable income for that went up momentarily, and now it's come back down to reality. And I would say that those products in reality were made in many cases for one percenters, and not for the broader market. And so what we've really been looking at is, how do we make sure that whatever we're creating is accessible, affordable, but also effective in what its purpose is. And so I would say, rather than connected fitness, we've created what we're sort of calling a connected wellness experience. And that means there's different on-ramps into this experience where you don't have to buy a singular product and then spend money on a subscription for that singular product. That we want to be the solution that works with the demands of people's lives. We know that they're on the go. We know that they're sometimes at home. They're sometimes at the gym. And that we don't want to be stationary in that way. So we want to have content, tools, products that match the lifestyles of our users. When we look at the digital side, if somebody subscribes with us, effectively it's about, I think, 30 cents a day. So that's pretty accessible to bring the depth of experts and content and tools to our users. And then on the physical goods side, we look to find all the ways to bring the highest quality experiences. And so we haven't touched on, but effectively Inspire Fitness was integrated into Centr as a part of my taking this role. With Inspire Fitness, we bring more than 20 years of quality craftsmanship in the strength training and fitness category to bear for the company. And so we're taking that to unlock a whole suite of products that we're launching. By the time this podcast airs, we will have launched in multiple retail channels across the United States and around the world. Awesome. Those products range from very accessible fitness accessories that will be available through Walmart across the United States, in store and online. We're launching 27 unique products in that channel, all the way to functional trainers that are branded Centr 1, Centr 2, and Centr 3 that range from entry level that's below $1,000 all the way up to a machine that combines a functional trainer with a what we call a selectorized Smith machine all in one, which is personally my favorite because it's literally like 2 or 3 pieces of equipment put into one, and it looks super cool. But it's all being done through the view of how do we engineer down the price without compromising quality to make it more accessible? How do we connect it with digital content that is also accessible and at a price point that any American can afford and come in through?
That's a big vision. There's a lot of moving parts in there, Andrew.
Yeah, a lot. So it's been a busy year. By the time this airs, I will have celebrated my 1-year birthday in this role. So we've been doing a lot in the last 12 months.
Yeah, that's great. Congratulations. We're going to circle back on some of that stuff too, but you mentioned something that caught my ear: mental health versus mental fitness. Mm-hmm. It's not something I've actually discussed on the show. So, unpack that a little bit if you don't mind. What are the differences, and why is that significant?
So the way I view it, and there's definitively scientific brains out there that are way more knowledgeable and developed on this than I am. But the way I liken it is mental health is more, is a broader, sort of a broader collective of all areas of how you are mentally approaching life, elements of anxiety, depression, how you unpack the different things that influence the decisions that you make. All of that falls into the mental health category. Mental fitness for me is how do you have tools and exercises and content that help sharpen your mental acuity as you go off and do different things in your life. And it's sort of a subset of broader mental health. But I don't think that one doesn't preclude the other, but one is much broader. And so, when I think about like mental health and I talk about like what I view as the crisis in the US, I have 2 children that are in college, and the level of, from what I can see through 2 data points at 2 different universities, the level of SSRIs that children are prescribed and on college campuses is insane. That like kids are medicated, and my understanding of SSRIs is they sort of limit your emotional, like the lows are limited on how low things can go, but also the highs are limited, right? And so your emotional experience of life has like sort of bookends put on it. And it would be great if we can find other solutions and other alternatives and other ways to help this generation and all other generations to be able to experience life in its fullest versus having to go through medication to really, have a healthy mental outlook.
It's an interesting problem, and hearing your perspective on it. I mean, it's such an odd thing. We're so connected, right? Like we're more
Yeah.
connected than ever.
Yeah.
But yet people are lonelier, people are more depressed.
Without a doubt. And it feels generationally as
Yeah.
if it's cascading down. It's not getting better with generations. The technology and technology's role, which is supposed to be like, it's been all about productivity and efficiency. The flip side is it's just isolating humans in ways that I was reading a study, I forget, it was a few months ago, that talked about the health impact of loneliness in the United States and how that not having friends, its impact on you is the equivalent of smoking, like, whatever it was, 3 or 4 packs of cigarettes in a day or something. So it's, it was connecting sort of this notion, the epidemic of loneliness, from a health standpoint. And it's sort of, one of the amazing things about wellness and fitness is it creates community. Even if it's like if you're running a marathon, you're running it by yourself. But if you're training for a marathon, oftentimes you get to train with a community that's supporting each other and lifting everyone up. And so that community aspect, I think, is such a key component of what we look to do in our experience. We have a Facebook community where they support each other, and it's really almost a no trolls policy. Like they almost like smoke out trolls, where they want to be supportive of each other. And when people post images that are transformational images or whatnot, everyone's like, "Oh my God, that is so amazing! How great!" And it's what community should be, right? And it could be people that live in Australia and somebody else in Germany. It doesn't matter. They're supporting each other and lifting each other up.
So, gosh, community. And I noticed, like, anecdotally, like my wife and I work from home. My wife goes to an office, right?
Yeah.
Every day. And she also goes to her CrossFit gym first thing in the morning. She goes to her office. She oftentimes plays volleyball, does activities, goes climbing. I'm the opposite. Like I wake up in the morning, I'll do my tonal workout, right? I'll walk my
Yeah.
dog. I'll spend most of the day at home. And then, I'll cook dinner at night like that. We have we're hand in hand as a couple, but yet we're living very different lives. And I think it's kind of interesting to me and I feel it. I'm like, oh my God, even though I talk to people all day on Zoom, like, I got to get out more and like do things, maybe join a basketball league or something. Right. So it's like this two different things.
Admitting it is the first step. So I think you're taking the first step right now. After this podcast, find that volleyball league and,
Yeah. You can send me a therapist invoice as well, Andrew. I'll pay it right away. But I guess what I'm getting at is like some people could argue like with apps and things like that, we're especially for fitness and wellness, where we need people to kind of get out into the community. And sometimes gyms are a great place for people to connect in person.
Yeah.
Right. And, digital community is valuable, no doubt, but it's also kind of challenging to do well. So when you look at like, that dichotomy of like, okay, we have technology and you have a great technological application here that can help people be better, feel better, but also it's linking them more to technology. So how do you work with that kind of dichotomy of the consumer's wellness?
Yeah. So it's a good point and totally fair that technology is a thing that's creating isolation, but then we're leaning on technology to create community. Right. That's the exact thing that is creating the problem. So, and to your point, I don't think a lot of companies have done it well. Although I'm sure if you went to every single digital company in the fitness space, in wellness space, and even media space and said, hey, is there a community group? There's probably like 200 people working on community. But, in terms of, is it really creating community? I'd say in a lot of cases, it's coming up short. So for us, we want to we want to fuel the community that exists, that's supporting each other, and enable it and empower it. We're also, I sort of skirt it a little. We are working on things that you and I can talk about at a future podcast that
Okay.
are going after sort of more IRL experiences that will give the people the chance to come together physically in different instances to support each other, and that could be in the form of a competition, that could be in the form of training for something, but it's that ability for people to locally, truly, physically connect, and so I think that's a missing element that we're going to be looking to add in. And as I said, we'll be able to give more on that in the coming months.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, and that's kind of where I would see this stuff can be leveraged a lot, is like if you can somewhat kind of, this is a bad word, but I'll just use that, organize people by interests and get them, connected through those specific interests,
Yeah.
whether it be a book club, I mean, it's generic, or, a hiking club or whatever it may be, fly fishing, as you and I were talking about pre-recording, like gain these interests and then connect people to push these in real life experiences. That's pretty powerful to me.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I'll tell you, the thing that's been fascinating is the nonprofits that train people for things like the New York Marathon or LA Marathon that you see. If you're down at the boardwalk in Santa Monica, you see this group running along because they have a running coach and people that are, whatever, just looking to finish the marathon. And they went and they raised $2,000 or $5,000. It's a collection of humans that don't know each other, that come together every week for 1 or 2 days to train with the goal of, they're essentially running for a cause. That's great. That connects them. They're running. That connects them. And they're seeking, honestly, community. Because if they weren't, that's not what they would have been doing with their weekends for 3 to 6 months leading up to it. And so if you look at that, that works. Like, that is real. That works. And so how do we tap into that reality?
Yeah. I mean, even like, I don't want to get too much on this topic, but like Meetup, right? Like that application, if I don't know if you ever used it, but meetups are just, it's an app or a website. And my wife uses it all the time to find like climbing partners or, hiking partners, where it's
Right.
what a great way to just, it's so basic, but people will use it because people are, they're searching for something else to do. And I think that
Totally.
mental wellness component is really powerful.
100%. Yeah, totally agree.
I want to get your insights because I like to ask people who come from other industries into the fitness industry, right? It's like coming from Hollywood, digital content. Now you're in the fitness and wellness industry. I know there's a lot of overlap because it's digital content and, doing things that way, and you're managing communities, like you said, like the Star Wars people are now, more, I guess, in the wellness perspective. But what's your take so far? I mean, it's been almost 1 year. You've been in the fitness and wellness industry. Like, what do you think compared to some of the other ones you've been in?
So to your point, yeah, there's a lot of similarities. It's the audience for this category is massive. And so audience is huge. That audience is constantly starved and looking for information. Like, there's a lot of fads and trends that are ripe in this industry, and they burn bright and then go away. And so for me, it's really, and that, by the way, is not a brand, right? A brand is not a fad. A brand is something that's got staying power. And so it's really identifying what's the difference between a fad, a trend, and something that really has longevity and is really built for the long haul and can be there for customers and users for the long haul. So that would be one sort of thing that I've been looking at closely as it relates to this space. I think the second is, on one side, there's a lot of digital innovation, and on the other side, I think there's a lot of status quo, where it's like, well, this is how we've always done it. This is how the fitness industry works, and like that for me is always an interesting opportunity, because it's like, well, is it really how it always is supposed to work, or is there an opportunity here to think about things a little bit differently? And that I love being the outsider looking in, because I haven't spent 20, I've been a participant, but I haven't been a 20-year health and wellness executive. I enjoy looking at it through a different lens, saying, okay, so we've got audience, they're looking for something, they need real solutions to real problems, content can help them, community can help them, products can help them, they want to be connected. What are all the solutions that we can think about related to that? Oh, and Chris has this massive megaphone to 100 million people around the world. How do we bring all that together in a unique combination? And so my first year has been looking at like that totality. And so we've created a very ambitious goal and plan of what we want to be. And now we're implementing it step by step, beginning with the relaunch of the brand, the launch of these new physical goods. We're launching new content in the coming months. All of that is what I would call Centr 2.0. And that will carry into 24 with a whole set of additional announcements on things that we've been working on.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And I admire, I respect the outside opinion coming in. I mean, the fitness industry has been, slow to adopt, I guess, historically.
Yeah.
That's fair.
It's like organ rejection.
Yeah, totally. Do you guys have any plans, I guess, for the brick and mortar? I mean, I don't know if that's something you can talk about, but is that, I mean, obviously you're going to be in physical locations, with the equipment, the Walmarts and things like that.
Yeah.
I think it's a great move. But what about in real life experiences moving, under the brand name?
So I can't yet. So that won't be out by the time this podcast airs. But I like being able to leave a breadcrumb so that you'll call me back up and we can do another one of these podcasts.
Yeah, of course. I love it.
But we are definitely looking at it. When we announce it, I think you'll be like, oh, I get it. That was what it was. But we're definitely looking at how we can be in the middle of experiences where groups come together to train and work towards a goal together.
Yeah, very cool. You said something before we started recording that really made me laugh. You stated that AI is like the new NFT, right? Of 2 years ago. And I touch on AI all the time in all of my podcasts. It's probably annoys my listeners, but I find it super interesting. I think people should be educated about it. So, maybe give us a little background on why you said that, why it's so funny, but then, how you're seeing AI now, as of Q3 2023 being integrated into the industry, and then where you think it could go. And then maybe just life in general.
Yeah. And so the reason I said that was, 3 years ago, everyone was doing everything NFT. It was like, it was this non-fungible token connected to everything, but nobody really knew what it meant, nor how it makes your life better. It was like, oh my God, is there an NFT? It's like, wait. And then everyone going out for funding and fundraising in the venture community was like, blockchain, NFT, and it was like, all these things. And through it, there was some things that were genuinely value creating. And then there was a whole bunch of noise. And so AI has come in, and ChatGPT definitely was the catalyst, which it's, by the way, an amazing tool. And so now I think every company going for investment is slapping AI into it. And I was talking to somebody yesterday who was like, I was looking to sell a company and we weren't finding any buyers. And I asked the person that was selling it, have you used any AI in this? And they're like, oh yeah, no, we definitely have used AI. They're like, oh, okay. They changed the name to put AI in the name and they sold it within 2 weeks. So it's like that for me is like very telling of like the environment, right? But once again, there's going to be really legitimate and impactful and profoundly impactful AI executions. But then there's going to be a bunch of noise. So we on our end want to be mindful of, there's sometimes value in being a first mover. There's sometimes value in being a fast follower. And we want to walk that line very carefully to see where we should be leaning in for really legitimate executions. And so, yeah, early days.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I feel like the people who are doing the really important work are just heads down quiet right now.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah,
like I've talked to
exactly.
some people I feel like are doing really, I'm like, oh, you guys are on to something here. And they're like, yeah, we don't want to talk about it. Like,
Exactly.
oh,
That's exactly right.
oh, you're
Anyone
killing
that's
me.
talking
Yeah.
about it, you're kind of like, yeah, I'm not interested in what you're talking about. Who's not talking about this? That's what I'm interested in. Yeah, no, for sure. That's 100% right. Like, people come out with
Yeah.
stuff in 6 or 12 months and you're like, oh,
Oh,
that's amazing. Like, right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. When you say fast follower, that's a new term to me. What do you mean by that?
Fast forward be some like, if somebody launches something and they could fail. And by the way, this at Disney, this was definitely a view where, does Disney need to be the company that goes out on the front edge and could fail publicly on something? Or do they let others go out there with venture capital funding or whatnot, and 90 out of the 100 will fail, and then the 10 that don't fail, you're like, oh, that's the thing that worked. And then you immediately jump and fast follow onto that success and buy it or build it. And so you sort of avoid the first round, where failure is honestly more likely than success, so that you then go to the second round where success is more likely than failure.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess when you put it that way, it makes a ton of sense. And I probably talked about it, but just in different terms. Um, but that's, and I imagine working at a company like Disney, you probably did a lot of fast following, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Disney's not looking to be on the front edge where that
No need.
90% falls off, but they are definitely like, that worked.
Yeah.
let's do that.
Yeah. Yoink.
Yeah.
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 I want to talk about the company as, you know, and I know you're a private company, right?
Yeah.
But what can you share about where you guys are at? You know, any kind of numbers or statistics, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. But give us some insights at where you guys are.
Yeah. So the company was both two companies, Centr and Inspire Fitness, were both acquired by High Post Capital in 2022. And the intention at the onset was to create a wellness platform that combined the two together, and was not meant to be a collection of brands, but rather, with Chris, with that megaphone, how do we create one unified wellness platform under one brand? And each company came to the table with its own strengths. So Centr, had been installed more than 5 million times around the world. Our user base is very engaged. I would say that it leaned towards what we call a holistic explorer, which is more of a person that is they are looking, they're busy, they're looking for new solutions, new information, new research that they can put to work and slot into their busy lives. They're learners. They're constantly looking, and so with Centr, we've been satisfying that group with launching new programs and new content, and saw significant success there. And a few like interesting stats, like we launched in the last year, we've launched new programs that bring our average workout length down in certain programs to 5 to 6 minutes. And our engagement level for workouts has increased 90% at the same time. So it's not like 90. And so we're seeing that adapting our experiences to match the lifestyles of this demographic are extremely well received. And interestingly, equally between men and women. It's not content that's catering towards a specific gender, but rather really it's almost 50-50. And then on the audio side, we've talked about meditation, we've talked about things like sleep visualizations. How do we help people start their day and end their day? We added in soundscapes like as a interesting audio element. And the result of that was our audio content increased 43% in like before after with just adding in elements of soundscape. So if you want to listen to like the waves crashing in Byron Bay in Australia, where Chris lives, no problem. We can help you just chill with the sound of the ocean. On the Inspire Fitness side, we had a company that's been around for 20 years. It has established itself as a leader in strength training, predominantly and initially through the specialty fitness channels across the United States and around the world. And those trainers, those functional machines range all the way up to thousands of dollars. And the engineering and this sort of proprietary IP that goes into those pieces of equipment, we felt we could bring into the broader mass channels. And so in the last 2 or 3 years, that equipment's increasingly been available through Costco. And we're now going to be bringing that equipment to pretty much every major retail channel in the United States over the next, call it 6 to 8 weeks. And, wow. And so for the first time, we'll have functional trainers that'll be sub $1,000 that are built with the same engineering and capability that someone might buy a $3,000 or $4,000 machine for on the high end.
That's incredible. I'm excited for you guys. I mean, that's I can get behind that. You know, the accessibility and everything. I've been caught by other people and by myself when I'm like, oh, you know, like the tonals. I have one. I love it. Right.
Yeah.
But it's not for everybody. And I just got lucky because, you know, I knew somebody. But, you know, really making it accessible because, you know, like we stated earlier, that's where the change needs to happen, is not people who, you know, have, you know, an ocean view and they have their beautiful, you know, tonal or Peloton sitting just like the commercials have, right? Totally. It's the people who are, you know, working the normal 8 to 5 and they need to square it in and they need to, you know, make some change in their lives. And so I applaud for what you guys are doing. Andrew, the last question I always like to ask people, and this is always in the spirit of collaboration, but, you know, how can we help you? What do you need? What's important to you right now? What would you like to hear What would you like to hear from people about?
Yeah. So we're on this mission. We are looking to empower, motivate our users to be able to create these amazing wellness journeys, bringing together the best of content, tools, products. And in a lot of cases, we're going to do those on our own. And in other cases, we're going to look to do it with partners that have something special that they can bring to that equation. And so I think, you know, one will be a call out to people that want to be a part of this solution, and, you know, with Chris, with what we're doing, and want to join in. We would love to have those conversations. And we've already been speaking with a number of opportunities and partners. But I think there's so much more that we can do. And we really want to be that ecosystem that brings more to this broader demographic, right? And I think the more success we have and the more connective tissue we have with that group, I think the more value it brings to other companies that are looking to hit that group as well.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, I appreciate you spending some time with me. This has been a lot of fun. You know, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and you say you're a storyteller, and you are, which makes for the best interviews. I always love great storytellers. You know, you can take a message and spin it up in a way where it's engaging, and that's you know, very understated skill, but you know, very, very powerful. So anyway, I really appreciate it. I love what you guys are doing. People want to get a hold of you, or if you'd like them to go somewhere online, is there anywhere specifically that you'd like them to go?
Yeah, come on over to Centr.com, CENTR.com, and check us out and install our apps on Android or iOS and get started with your wellness journey. And if you want to reach out, drop a note to Andrew at Centr.com.
Awesome. Andrew, thanks again.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Go
keep
enjoy
up
your weekend.
Work. Your podcast is awesome. I've enjoyed listening to it. So keep it up.
I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Sugerman.
Thanks a lot.